Is liberty dying where you live? Escape to Keene at freekeene.com.
So we're going to keep things moving here because we're running a little bit late, and we do have our final speaker in the house, the closing speaker of the evening. I want to talk a little bit about who he is. I was put in a jail cell back in 2011 for standing in front of a police car as an act of civil disobedience when they were arresting a peaceful lady. The Keene police were arresting a peaceful lady, a friend of ours in Central Square, for engaging in an open container. She was enjoying a beverage in the park, and apparently the Keene police didn't like that very much, so they arrested her for it. And I and a few other folks, including Rich Paul, stood in front of those police cars, and I ended up going to jail after a jury trial, being found guilty of disorderly conduct, I believe the charge was. No, excuse me, obstructing government administration. That's what it was. They have these catch-all charges that they'll usually hit you with if they don't like something you're doing, but they don't actually have a law against it. And so that was what they hit me with. And when I went into jail, as I was talking about previously, I wanted to have as positive an experience as I could in there, and that is what I did end up having. And I had a lot of great conversations with a number of the jailers, the corrections officers, as they are called in there. And of course, as we've discussed previously at the convention, the Keene jail it's a special place. We call it the Keene Spiritual Retreat. It's kind of a joke, but it's also serious. I mean, if you approach it from that perspective, that's what it can be for you. It's not as scary of a place as a lot of institutions that are similar. So I'm grateful for a lot of the staff at this particular facility. They're a cut above, I think, the average jailers. And so, as I said, I had a lot of conversations with some of them in there, and one of them was Bryan Tann, and he's going to be the next speaker. He's no longer working for the jail, which is probably one of the reasons why he's able to speak here for us today. And maybe he'll tell us more about some of the political pressures and what it's like working in the system as somebody who cares about freedom and the conflicts that whatever internal conflicts he's experienced and his story and how he got to where he is today. I'm sure we're going to hear some of that and more. Bryan, come on up, man. Bryan Tann from formerly. I'm really excited about this. Bryan approached me via email prior to leaving his job and reached out and wasn't real sure what my response was going to be. And this, I think, comes back to the discussion we had about peace previously. Had I been a real angry person, had I been vitriolic when I was in jail, had I been hateful or spiteful towards my captors, I don't think Bryan would have reached out to me. So I think that, being a friendly person, coming from a perspective of love, appreciation, compassion, even for somebody with whom I might disagree with their job, created a bridge. And then when it came time for him to be ready to move on to another phase in his life, he reached out. Me and Pete actually went and met him at a local park. We had a nice hour-long conversation. And as I said, he ended up leaving his job. And now he's moving on to other things and a new exciting phase in his life, including some online video work with YouTube. He had me on his show. It was going to be a 10-minute interview. Ended up being a 90-minute interview. And it was great. So Bryan Tann, welcome to Keenevention. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Wow, it's hard to know what you're going to say after a lead up like that. I want to say first and foremost, I want to thank Ian for having me here. When he asked me to do this, I was really blown away. I'm like, okay, who really wants to hear what I have to say? But hey, I figured why not? And if what I have to say can do anything to help anybody out in any which way, shape, or form, then I'm all about doing it. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and after, once I finished high school, I had some time where I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, dealing with different personal tragedies. I lost my grandfather in 1996, and that was really, really hard to deal with, and just with other things that I'd experienced in my life, just with upbringing and such, it was really, really hard. Once you turn 18, the world just sort of like kicks you in your behind and, throws you out of school and says, all right, now kid, you're a big boy now, so go do stuff, and as time went on, I finally figured out that, I wanted to get into something that dealt with law, just for the fact that I had a very, very strong belief of what was right and what was wrong. Sorry, I like to move around when I talk. I had this idea of what was right and what was wrong. Now, I had relatives that were really involved in the 60s and 70s with the Black Panther movement. And, even though, I still had a lot of those mindsets of, you don't take any treatment from anybody, no matter what, that you don't feel that you should, I still felt that, the law in and of itself and the legal system, there's what's right and then there's what's wrong. And, if I can get into the system, maybe I can do something to make a positive change. So in 2006, I enrolled in a school called the International Academy of Design and Technology. And I took up criminal justice because, like I said, I wanted to get into the system and institute some positive change. I graduated among the tops of my class, and I met my soon-to-be ex-wife online. She came down to Pittsburgh. We spent a little bit of time together, and I decided she was from this area. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of living in the city, so why not move up to New Hampshire? Might be, a good way to, get my life started, and who knows, do something positive with myself. I moved up here, and at first everything was really nice. I found it, really hard to get a job in, 2007, as a lot of people did. So I'd gotten a job with Franklin Pierce University in their campus safety department, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I did that for a couple of years, and I especially had to because at the time my ex-wife was pregnant with our son. So I did my time there, and when it was time to leave, I left. And everyone had told me ever since I had even moved up here, you should go to the jail. At the time, the jail was in Westmoreland. And kept saying, no, I don't want to be in a jail setting, and I had this whole huge idea of what jail was like. I don't want to be in a situation where it's just so negative. I don't want that. I just don't. Well, I finally ended up going to the jail because nothing else was paying. I didn't have anything else. So I go into the jail, and I'm working at Westmoreland, and it was really strange, like the old jail. I'd said things to my previous coworkers. The social interaction between officer and officer was much better in Westmoreland than it was when we moved to Keene. But for the inmates in Westmoreland, the conditions were just horrible. If anyone had been in there, you would know what I'm talking about. Yep, Ian, you've been there. It was horrible. It was like being in a dungeon. In the summertime, it was like you might as well have been out in the Sahara. And in the wintertime, you're freezing to death. I mean, it was just horrible. And then where the sentenced inmates lived, they look like refugees from a war. I mean, you're just in this big gymnasium with a cot. And all your worldly possessions that you're allowed to have are just in this little plastic box that you just slip under your bed and just pray to God while you're out working. No one's getting into your stuff because there's no staff in there. So even when I was first there, my first couple of days there, and I'm trying to get my feet wet, trying to understand, how am I going to be not even just a rookie CO, but a black CO? Because at the time, I was one of two black officers. There was one officer who was from Guam, so that made things a little bit easier for me. But I mean, realistically, how am I going to handle? There's a population of inmates in here that are almost 90% white, and then 10% other. I'm probably being really, really generous with the numbers. It was probably more like 99%. And it was hard at first, because I'm seeing some of the looks that I'm getting from some of the inmates, and I'm trying hard to just say, it's the badge, it's not the color. It's the badge, not the color. That's what I'm telling myself. But when I was able to start, really talking to people, getting to know people, it made things a little bit easier to, just sort of put those things aside, not worry about it so much. After a while, I just started telling myself, this is the job, and you can like me or you can hate me. I don't care. But at the same token, the one thing that I noticed that a lot of officers did, especially some of the younger officers, that I didn't do, was that I knew what it was like to have people in my family incarcerated. I had a cousin who was put in prison at an early age, probably in his early 20s, first-degree murder, so things that he did do, he He shouldn't have been in society, sadly, and I hate to say that. Well, he died in prison. He actually died from swine flu. The COs that were there just saw him laying there and just figured whatever. You know, he laid there sick for, I believe, an entire weekend, and then he finally died. And I remember being so angry and just wanting to just rip things apart. And then I realized, you know what, that's not going to bring him back. You know, he was in this situation where he's in jail, but it was up to the officers and it was up to that facility to look out for his best interests, and they didn't do that. And I swore to myself that not one person in my care was going to go through that. Not one relative was going to have to weep for them because I didn't do my best. So that really made me look at my job from a whole different perspective. And I'm actually kind of grateful for that, because I thought that I was slowly starting to move towards a real harder edge look on things. You know, keep in mind, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. If you're in here, you have done something wrong. I'm in here to deal with you because you did something wrong. So I think that the one positive that came from that death was that I was able to look at things a little bit differently and remember, you know, hey, this guy is related to somebody. This guy has family. This guy has friends. He has people that love him. So no matter what he did to get in here, don't make him any less of a human being. And that's how I really looked at my job. And that really helped me deal with a lot of different personalities, you know. I mean, I would see people with, you know, white power tattooed on them. Why would I take that personal? If that's your belief, that's your belief. You're still a human being. Doesn't mean I can't have a conversation with you. And that was one of the things that I found really worked for me as a corrections officer. I went out of my way to have conversations with inmates. You know, a lot of officers, a lot of people didn't do that. You know, they would do their thing, you know, and they would either sit at their desk, walk around, look through cells. Some talked, some didn't. I tried to make it a point to talk to everybody. I wanted to get to know everybody as a person to make sure I didn't fall into that method of thinking of criminal, officer. I didn't want that. Especially when in talking to some other officers, and I'm not going to throw any of my former colleagues under the bus at all, but there were some that I even said it when I was working there. They should not have been there. A lot of them just had the mindset of, I've got a badge, this gives me the power, and you're the scumbag that I'm dealing with. And I hated that. These were people that I didn't want to work with, and I tried not to be quiet about it. You know, and a lot of times that got me in trouble. You know, I would get, you know, there were a couple times I was told, you know, try to get along better with other officers, and all right, you know, fine, whatever. So I sort of hung back a little bit, but I would definitely do what I could to make sure that I was more by myself. And if I was with people, that we were more like-minded. When we moved to Keene, it was a very, very interesting experience because, you know, I'm in this building, and at first it's completely empty. Nobody's there except for a couple of sentence inmates working. And 7 o'clock runs around, and it's like, all right, it's time for me to go home. I've been awake all night. But we don't have enough officers to handle this massive exodus. Well, I'll stay, not a problem. And as people are coming in, and, you know, people are just, it's really strange to see the look on a grown man's face that he looks like a kid at Christmas because they're in climate control. They don't have to like wait a particular day to be able to, well, not go outside, but actually be able to go and stretch their legs and move around in a basketball court. Or they don't have to worry about, you know, a TV up so loud that they can't hear themselves think, or just have a conversation, or speak on the phone to their kids. I mean, a lot of the times when there were arguments over things, there was because there were guys on the phone trying to talk to their kids, and there was people just being loud. And, you know, some people being disrespectful, some people not realizing it, you know. So it was really strange to me to see that, you know, because it's like, you know, all right, these guys they're locked up, but they're so excited to be in this bigger area. And I'm like, I think that's when I started realizing that there was just something not right, you know. And then a lot of people would see my tattoo. You know, I've got the anarchy sign on my forearm. I got it as me being a person who I'm not for I don't like structure. I don't like being told what to do. I've never liked being told what to do. That's probably one of the biggest things that got me in the principal's office as a kid. I didn't like getting told, well, you can't do that. Well, why? Well, that's not nice. I'm not hurting nobody. You know, if I want to draw all over this book that's mine in black magic marker, who are you to tell me I can't? It belongs to me. I actually did get in trouble for that, by the way. And no, it was kind of weird. You know, I looked at my mom when I went home. I said, how could I get in trouble for that if it was mine? And she just said, you know what? When you do things against the norm, it doesn't make people comfortable. Fair enough. Too bad I'm not very good at being like everybody else, because all I did was make people uncomfortable. But I think that a lot of people will question me about my tattoo. Well, what does it mean? Well, it's part of my own personal spiritual beliefs. Well, what is that? Well, I look at anarchy as tearing down what doesn't work and building up better on its ashes, kind of like a phoenix. And I put a scripture verse under the anarchy sign, Proverbs 25:14, where it says, he who boasts of his gifts falsely are like clouds in wind without rain. Meaning, I'm going to be true to myself. If I tell you something, it's 100% true to the best of my knowledge. And if I'm wrong, I will come up and tell you. And I'll apologize for telling you the wrong thing. And I told people that over and over and over again. And Derek, I think I told you about it. And I know I told Ian. That was one of the things we talked about before. And I kept wondering, I asked myself, it was like this little tiny voice in the back of my head. What are you doing here? And at first I would say, well, I gotta have a job, gotta take care of my family. But you don't like authority. You don't like, I don't want to sit here and come right out and say I don't like cops, but you know what? You don't like cops. No, I don't. You know, I hated, crossing the street and having a, guy in a squad car just stare at me. Like, what the hell are you looking at? Why can't I cross the street? Just because I'm crossing the street don't mean I'm on my way to doing something wrong. Leave me alone. And this is back down in Pittsburgh. Then I moved up here and I'm getting watched. I'm like, oh my God. Leave me alone. I am doing nothing wrong. I was like, all right, so if you feel that way, why do you do this job? I have to take care of my family. I got to make a living somehow. Oh, okay, fine. Make your living. So then people will come in. Oh, what are you doing in here? What are you doing in here for? Oh, I had weed on me. Okay, so why the hell are you here? I've smoked weed a lot. I mean, let's just call it as it is. I was a pothead back in the day. I mean, I made sure to have a lot of friends that smoke weed because I didn't have a job to buy it myself, so I made sure to hang around people that always had it. That was just the way I rolled with it. And they was like, well, they arrest me for it, and I'm like, well, that's stupid. There's people out there that are, robbing people at gunpoint, knife point, breaking into people's homes and, killing people, raping people. So, sorry. Oh, no. They're coming for me. It's all right. Passive resistance. So, and I would say, well, that's ridiculous. And I would tell people, you know what, I started telling people, the difference between me and you is I never got caught. I've smoked my fair share of weed. I've had my fair share of times being outside and intoxicated. I've had my fair share of fights, and I've never been arrested. So I'm like, the difference between me and you is I just never been caught. I've just been lucky. That don't make me any better than you. And I don't even remember the first person I said that to, but that person looked at me and he says, you know what? No one with a badge has ever told me that before. It's like, well, you know what? Then there's something wrong with them. Because that's the bottom line. If you ever get incarcerated for your beliefs for whatever reason, the people that wear those badges are not any better than you. And if they don't know that, then there's something wrong with them. And whatever they try to tell you to try to make you feel like they're all high up and this, that, and the third, don't listen to them. Because sadly enough, and there are some people that I did work with that had the mindset, there's nothing you can tell them that will change their mind. There just isn't. And it's really sad. I mean, Derek brought something that I was doing that he didn't like to my attention. And you know what? I accepted it as positive constructive criticism at one point. Because you know what? Obviously, if he felt strongly enough to come to me and tell me something, then I would be stupid not to listen. I actually had, at one point, we moved over to the new jail, and I remember I was in K Block, which is the highest classification in general population. In other words, those are the individuals that are in there for what would be considered violent offenses or have been previously incarcerated. And I remember it was after lights out, people were still awake, which was fine. I called everyone out of their cells over something. I don't remember what it was, but I told people this wasn't going to work. We need to do something different. And one of the guys in there, who a lot of the COs hated him because he gave them hard times like you wouldn't believe. Never really gave me much of a hard time, strangely. But he said, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Tann, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And that was actually something that I allowed that I did get in trouble for a lot, letting them refer to me by just my last name. I didn't make anyone call me by my rank. I didn't care about my rank. I had told people before, you want my rank, you can have it. And I actually at one point took my chevron off and said, "Here you go." All this is a piece of metal to me. This does not mean who I am as a person. So I walked right up to him and he said, "You know what? I understand that you got to do what you got to do, but I didn't like the way you addressed us." And I said, "Okay, well, how do you think I could have done it better?" And he looks at me and he's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah. What can I do to make my interaction with you better?" And he tells me, he said, "You know what? We're grown men. We're people just like you are. So," and I was like, "So you feel like I talk down on you?" "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, it'll never happen again. Sorry." And he went back to his cell and he looked back at me for a second like he couldn't even believe that it happened. But he went back to his cell, no other issues. When he left for prison, I asked him, one of the other officers had told him, "Go clean your cell." And he just sort of had this look on his face. Like, "Yeah, okay, I'm really going to do that." He goes up to his cell. About 10 minutes later, I walk up. He's just laying on his bed reading his book. And I went to him, I said, "Hey, would you mind just cleaning out your cell for me, please?" It's like, "Because you asked?" "Sure." And he cleaned his cell out like it looked like he had never even been there. And that was one of that sort of interaction, that sort of thing is what made me happy about my job. Is that I could talk to people, these so-called problem inmates, and if I talked to them like a human being, I didn't have issues. I'm not saying that was always the case. I mean, you've got people that just rub you the wrong way. You got people that they find that little nerve of yours and they just kick it, and they try to get on your hearts. And you get people who've been in prison who, when they see officers acting like that, they think that they're gonna treat you any kind of way. So sometimes you have to flip the script. Am I happy about that sort of interaction? Absolutely not. But there are times that you do what you have to do. And I think the whole doing what I had to do, it really, in a lot of ways, sort of killed my soul. After a while, I mentioned a little bit ago about that little voice that's just, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" It's rough after a while because you can only use the whole, I need a job to take care of my family so much before you really have to look deep within yourself and find out why are you doing this? And I tried really hard not to compare myself to a Nazi because I wasn't behaving as such. I tried to make sure I treated everyone the way I would want to be treated, the way I wish the COs would have treated my cousin. But in the end, it's like, how can you keep doing a job where your job is to essentially watch people who are incarcerated? You walk by the video visitation and you see men and women talking to their kids and their kids reaching at that screen to touch their mother or father. It hurt. I remember a young girl, and I'm not going to say her name, but she would come in and she would always be a handful because in a lot of ways, I think that the police would rile her up as they brought her in. And I would talk to her all the time. And even when she was mad, she would at least listen. And she would calm down. And she had so many scars up and down her arms from self-mutilation, it hurt to see. I remember one night walking by her cell because she was in the R109, which is one of the 2 camera cells for observation for people on suicide watch and other watches. And I saw her cutting at her wrist. I shined my flashlight in, and I see blood squirt from her wrist. And internally, I'm freaking out because you never want to see that. Nothing can prepare you for that. They can train you how to go into a situation. They can train you to go in and put your emotion aside and turn on the robot and go in hardcore. Sure. I didn't need much of that. I know how to handle that. I grew up in the streets. I know how to turn off all emotion and go into things hard. Yeah. But when you see a young girl, not even 23 years old, hacking at her wrist, there is no training for that. I opened up her door. I called in for backup. And I even said, because she looks up at me like surprised to see me. I'm like, put that down, step back. And of course, I said it a little bit louder. And she did. She stepped back. And she looks at me and just says, why won't you just let me do what I'm going to do? And that shook me. I don't usually remember my dreams, but I had nightmares about that for at least a month. Just seeing this girl just cutting at herself. And I would always ask myself, well, she must have been through so much that this is what she needs to do to handle it. Why the hell is she even in here? She should not be here. She needs to be someplace where they can facilitate her needs, where someone can just be there with her. And I'm not even saying send her to SPEW, the state hospital, because, yeah, okay, because people go there all the time and they come out just right, huh? No, I don't think so. And sadly enough, our illustrious leaders and their infinite wisdom, first things they want to cut is all sorts of, hospital, things for outpatient therapy and things of that nature. First things they cut. They never look to their own wallets. They look to everyone else. And they want to go into the communities that need the help the most. And what do they care? So here's this girl cutting herself up in a position where she's getting no real help whatsoever. And her issues, when she finally lashes out because of whatever reason, is to be met by force. Yeah, that's going to get her better. Remember another fellow who, I believe he was suffering from alcohol-induced dementia. He was apparently a super genius as a kid and then just got into drinking. And now the guy, he's just completely out there. And this fella, there was a couple times that he would look at me and I guess he figured if he called me a nigger enough that I would react negatively to him. One day he actually looks at me and he goes, "You're just keeping me locked in here because I'm a white man. You're a nigger and that's what you do. And one day they're going to get you." I said, well, you know what? They probably will get me one day, but it ain't today and it won't be you. His only response, "Aw." "Well, can I have a peanut butter sandwich?" "No, sir, not right now. Lunch will be here soon." But we kept him in seg. This little old man, we kept him in segregation. Because if we put him in R109, he'd scream all night. And you would actually hear, it would be, "Help me, let me out, help me." He didn't even know where he was. He would actually ask me, "Where am I? Why am I in, I feel like I'm in a jail." "You are in a jail." "Well, why?" I'm like, "I don't know, I didn't bring you here." It's like, "Well, can I go home?" "No, you can't, I'm sorry." "Why?" I don't know. That was my default answer. I don't know. Or, I ain't bring you here. I'm just here to look after you. Well, can I call my uncle? When I let you out to make a phone call, and that always made me feel horrible. Yeah, sure, when I let you make a phone call. If you got money on your books, you can call whoever the hell you want. I don't care. That was the one thing I hated about working in the R&S units. In our block, let me just explain how our block worked. R&S were theoretically 3 separate housing units. Top tier of our block was where all the sentence fellas lived. Bottom tier was people that were in R&D, receiving and diagnostic. Are you too crazy to go down to the day rooms, or do we have to watch you because you're in danger of yourself? The R101 cell was the negative pressure cell for people who had anything that could be considered an infectious disease. 108 and 109 were the suicide watch cells primarily. And then the R112, there was actually an electrical outlet because, people came in that had special medical needs. One individual had sleep apnea, and he needed his machine. And then S block was SEG. And then you had Super SEG, which was an interesting place, the one thing, Ian was totally right that, the Cheshire County Department of Corrections isn't like it's not Oz. It's not, That's the one thing that I did and do give credit for, is that you didn't have to worry about being assaulted or being killed like you do at certain places. Valley Street, you rolling the dice. And house always wins in Valley Street. A lot of the things that you could get away with here at the Cheshire County Department of Corrections, you really couldn't do in Valley Street. You just couldn't, And I believe they're a privately run facility too, just an FYI. So they are subject to a lot of the things that come with a actual enemy run facility, just an FYI. But either way, no matter how clean a place looks, no matter how nice the staff is, the bottom line is you're still being held. And to have this little old man in here screaming for someone to help him, it was hard. It was something else that was really hard to see. There was at one point he got moved to a booking cell because he was just getting too wild and out. And somehow, I wasn't there for it to happen, but his cell door opened. Now, the report says he came out of his cell aggressively. From a couple of other eyewitness accounts, he looked at the door kind of confused and was walking out thinking he was being allowed out. Either way, whichever one is right or wrong, because like I said, I wasn't there, that little old man ended up with a broken arm because he was football tackled to the ground by an officer. Little old man. Now granted, he's attempted to assault staff before. He kicked at one guy's junk. He tried to mule kick him, and he threatened a lot. He did a lot of threatening and everything. But, one of the things that we are taught is how to be able to restrain without causing serious injury. So when I found out that little old man had his arm broken, I was really upset about that. I was very upset about that. And once again, what the hell am I doing here? We had another fella come in, another older guy, who had this guy was off. He was completely off his rocker. One day we came into a cell to check on him. One evening we came into a cell to check on him. He pulls down his pants and his underwear and bends over, looks over his shoulder and says, "Are you here to rape me?" I'm like, "No." "Well, why the hell not?" I'm like, wow, okay, relax. It's not that kind of party. But I go into a cell because they tell me, Tann, this guy needs to, take a shower, so take him over to SEG. There's no one in sub-SEG. Take him over there, let him take a shower, open up the door, and let him walk around, do whatever he wants. Yeah, sure. Because being locked up for 23 and a half hours a day is really doing him some good. So I'll go over, open up his door and I say, hey, let's go. Let's go get you showered up and we'll clean out your cell. Well, he came at me. He came at me to attack me. I defended myself. I didn't harm him. But do you realize how much you kick yourself in the junk when you realize that you had to get an old man, push him up against the wall, and handcuff him? I mean, he was an older guy, and I joked about it with a family friend. I said, yeah, I feel real tough. I handcuffed the lawn gnome. Yeah, tough guy. And I tried to laugh about it so I wouldn't dwell on it. But seriously, this is the position I'm in. It's either let this man attack me or me being physically superior to him, push him against the wall and handcuff him. Am I afraid of him? No. Can he hurt me? Logistically, no. But I am trained, and it is drilled in your head as you train. If someone comes at you, you defend yourself. That's basic. I understand that. If I had it all to do again, would I have subdued him the way I did? Probably, because it was the best way I could do it for me not to be hurt and for him not to be hurt. But once again, why the hell are you putting yourself in this situation? Why are you doing this? And that's not the only time I had to go hands-on with an inmate. Thankfully, the other times that were with inmates that may actually pose a danger to me. And the only reason why I say that's better is because, I'm sorry, but even though this guy's coming at me, you know what? I'm not trying to be a bully. This is a little old man who's got a problem. He's got a mental issue. Why the hell is he even in jail in the first place? What is being incarcerated in a jail, locked up 23 hours a day, 23 and a half depending? What good is that going to do that man? None. Not a damn bit of good. And that is the system that I thought that I could come into and instill some positive change. That was the system that I thought that if I became a part of, if I came in and tried to, do the right things by people, see people as people, not as inmate, not as person in orange or person in blue or whatever the hell. Come in with the mindset of, I don't care what you did on the outside to get yourself here. You are a human being the same as I am, and I respect you as a human being. This is the same system that I came into that I thought that if I came in with that mindset, it could institute some positive change. Well, you know what? It doesn't. I'm sorry. It doesn't. I wish to hell that it did. I do. I truly do. Because the bottom line is, I have been in that jail for 2 Christmases, 3 Thanksgivings. And you know what? It sucks. It is beyond depressing. I don't care how clean a place looks. I don't care how safe a place looks. Locked up on a holiday. Now, it was hard for me because I'm a long way from home, from what I consider home. So, yeah, maybe I can relate. But I could also call out 2 months in advance, hop in my car, and drive 10 hours and be home with my family. These are cats whose family are 10, 15 miles away. They can only get 30 minutes on a damn screen with a phone in their hand. It's hard. It's hard to go into a cell and tell a grown man, hey, you need to take a shower. I'm having complaints about your body odor. It's hard to look a person in the eye and tell them, I understand and I agree with you that the reason why you're in here sucks. But no, there is nothing you can do about it. When Rich Paul first went in, he was getting really frustrated because he just wanted to work on his case, but they wouldn't let him have a keyboard for the computer because there was a touchscreen keyboard on the thing. And his whole thing was, how am I going to be able to do any sort of work with a touchscreen? That's going to take me forever. Why not just let me have a keyboard? And I even told him, I said, you're exactly right. Let me see what I can do for you. I was told, no, can't do it. Because when we had people with keyboards and they totally mismanaged it, they misused it, people use the computers to do this, to do that, to do the other thing, and blah, blah, blah. And if he gets mad about it, tell him that some of his Free Stater friends were some of the ones that had something to do with it. And I'm like, all right, or you can just come up with a non-combative way for me to do this. Did I go up to Rich Paul and tell him exactly that verbatim? No. Why would I do that? So I'm going to say, hey, look, I tried to go to bat for you. I kind of got my ass chewed a little bit, but it's still a no-go. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a banner moment in my life. You know, that was probably the second or third time I had seen Rich in there, and each and every time Rich was in there, me and him were able to have, you know, good conversations and chuckle. And this was the first time that I actually had to go to him and tell him no dice on something, and I felt like shit having to do it. Every time that someone came up to me with something that was, I even saw as a reasonable person, because they even said, you have to use verbiage like that in your reports, reasonable person, reasonable suspicion, reasonable. I see it as a reasonable request, and I have to deny it. It sucks. It sucks to have to do. But for 3.5 years, I gave myself to that place. I gave myself with the idea of I can institute some positive change. And you know, there were some people that I was helping. You know, there were some, you know, one fellow was telling me, you know what, I'm going to go to school. When I get out of here, I'm going to go to school because this is ridiculous. I wouldn't have thought about going to school if you wouldn't have told me that. Thank you. I said, you know what, don't thank me. You would have come up with it yourself. Don't thank me for whatever you choose to do positive for yourself, because I don't want the credit for it. You deserve all the credit for making that choice, not me. I don't want it. Care, custody, and control. That's the 3 C's that they throw at us for training. You're here for the care, custody, and control of adult offenders. Well, I damn sure cared about my job. I damn sure cared enough about my job. Back in now, I remember, and Ian, you might remember when we did our interview, and someone had put a comment down that I wasn't good at my job and I wasn't trusted by my coworkers. And, well, to me that says that I didn't care about my job. If I didn't care about my job, then January of this year, I received a meritorious service award. And one inmate in K Block started to assault another inmate. It was right in the middle, like first thing in the morning. You know, they were among some of the first people for breakfast. I just happened to look up, I hand out a milk, I look, and yeah, that's fun too. Here's your milk, move on down the line. And I just happen to look, and I see a guy elbow another guy in the face and just starts throwing punches at him. Well, if I didn't care about my job, I would have just stood there and be like, he getting his ass whooped. No, I did everything that I was supposed to do. Called in the code before, you know, anyone else knew what was happening. Before the other officers showed up, I had an entire day room locked down, the aggressor handcuffed on the ground, and the other guy was getting handcuffed as people came in. I was proud of that. I was proud of the fact, because here's this guy, he's beating the crap out of this guy who's not even fighting back. Do I know what the full story was behind their fight? Well, one guy says, well, he was talking shit on me and being disrespectful. I don't know what that guy's talking about. Do I know? No, all I saw was one guy getting the crap stomped out of him, and I went to go and help him. Threw myself in the fact that there's 50 plus people around. How do I know it wasn't a setup? And I go into that. Next thing you know, I'm in a sea of humanity, and I'm having my face stomped in. Yeah, I'm a big guy, but 50 on 1, I'm pretty sure the odds aren't in my favor. I am not Bruce Lee, and this is not Hollywood. I didn't care because I saw another human being that needed my help. I cared about my job. Custody, I don't think I can say it in enough words and enough languages, dead or alive, of how I did not want the custody. Custody means that the responsibility. I shouldn't have to be responsible for another adult unless it's my parent who is unable to take care of themselves. all right, there's some people that are in there for violent crimes, and yes, I feel that people that are a danger to society should be separated from society. Yes, absolutely. But for people that are in there just because they're smoking weed, or for child support, or because they, heaven forbid, told a police officer to go fly a kite and to kiss their ass, no, screw that. They shouldn't be in there. They should not be in my custody. Screw that. Control, yeah, sure. I love the idea of having control of another human being. No. Why would I want to control you? Why would I want to control you? Why would I want to control you? I have a hard enough time controlling myself. I have a hard enough time not just walking up to someone in the store that makes me mad and telling them what I think of them one way or the other. So why do I want to be in control of what you think, do, or say? Sorry, not my bag of tea. Not my nothing. Don't want it, don't need it. Care, that's the only part that I gave a damn about of my job. The care. Because people are being held, kept away from their family, their friends, for whatever reasons, and they need someone to at least give a shit about them, not judging them. And I told everyone in there that was the part of my job that I enjoyed the most. Oh, how can you look out for that guy? He's a ripper. Ripper being jailhouse term for people, sex offenders. Because you know what? They're a human being too. I may not agree with why they're there. I may deplore why they're there, but you know what? It ain't up to me to judge them. Just because a man wears a black robe, don't give him the right to judge him either. There's only one judge. He don't live down here. So I guess the one thing that I took from working as a corrections officer is that there ain't much in the way of freedom in this world, in this country. And if you really want it, you got to fight for it. Somehow, some way. Whether it's you keep your eyes on the police when they're doing their jobs and make sure they do it right. You videotape them. Hey, it was funny. They used to always say, these things are dangerous when we're doing our jobs because they can be filming us. We don't want that. You know what? If you see a police officer stopping somebody, because you know what? He will be on his P's and his Q's. It sucks that we have to it sucks that we're going to have to resort to that. But the bottom line is, it's the way it is. Especially in a small town where everybody knows everybody. A lot of the times, what's right goes right out the window because everyone knows each other. Everyone is of like-mindedness. And you know what? One thing that I actually had pointed out to me, and I agree with it most heartedly, is that when you call someone a gang or whatever because you're like-minded people, maybe you dress similarly, well, you know what? You're all wearing badges, so I guess you're a gang too. But are you going to be a positive or are you going to be a negative? You know, even when I was employed at the CCDOC, I would get caught driving while black. Actually, at an instance, I was driving in Troy. I was trying to go to a friend's house. I got lost. Police officer stops. Are you all right? Yep, I'm fine, officer. I was just on my way to a friend's house. I took a wrong turn. Everything's okay. I happened to stop to check the donut on my tire, check the donut that I had on my car because I had to have it put on there. Police officer comes right back. Let me see your ID. Why? What did I do? Well, I see you have your son in the car, which I did. And you're saying that you've got a donut on your car. I want to check to make sure you're safe. Officer, I'm fine. I was just double checking it because I thought it was a little bit wobbly, but I'm also very paranoid because I've got my son in the car. Well, this is an area where I know nothing goes on and this looks suspicious to me. And because you don't want to give me your ID, really? So let me see your ID right now. And I was like, look, man, I work at the jail. I'm not up to nothing. I was just going to a friend's house. But let me see your ID. Yeah, because yelling at me is going to work. So I handed him my jail ID. I thought that's what he wanted. I said I worked at the jail. He said, what are you doing? And I was like, you know what? You don't need to holler at me. I work in the same field as you. Well, then he tries to flip the script. Well, so do I, and you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, here's my wallet. Here's my driver's license. So he goes to run it. Thinking to myself, have fun with that. If I were going to steal a car, do you really think I'd steal a 2007 Yaris? An '07 Yaris that doesn't have power locks, does not have power windows? Sorry, but if I'm going to steal a car, I'm at least going to steal something that has power windows. So then he comes back, and I'm sitting there and I'm trying not to fall asleep because I'm bored out of my ass. My kid is half asleep, and I'm praying that he doesn't wake up because I don't want him to see his dad getting yelled at by some jackass on a power trip. So then he comes up and he starts trying to do this whole thing like he's a concern for my son. You know, I've got kids at home, and you know, and as a father, blah blah blah. And I just looked at him. I was like, "Yeah, can I have my wallet back, please? I'm ready to go." Gets it back. You have yourself a nice night. Yeah, sure. As I'm leaving, I look at my rear view, and I'm thinking to myself, no offense to anyone, but this is exactly what I said. No, this damn Peckerwood is not following me out of Troy. This fool got nothing else better to do but try to follow me out of Troy. Sorry. I didn't know someone who's maybe close to the same shade as the tires on your car can make you nervous. Kiss my ass. I guess the whole point of that is there are people that wear badges that want to institute positive change. There are. There are some that maybe they were a football player in high school and realized that they didn't have the chops to go to the NFL, so they decided to become a cop, and it's your fault that they're not in the NFL. Or it's your fault, insert here. Or maybe they were the kid that got picked on all the time in school and you happen to resemble one of their tormentors. I don't know. I don't really care. Just leave me the hell alone. If I'm not doing something wrong, piss off. And that's what I tried to do at the jail. If you're not doing anything wrong, I'm gonna piss off. That's why most of the time I sat down. Hey, you're watching TV, y'all are playing cards, y'all up there asleep. I did my walk around once an hour. Oh, I'd rather be at home. So I guess the whole point of my story, if there even is a point, is, you know what? There's feeding your family, there's doing what you need to be done. And I did everything that I could to stay true to who I am as a man and who I am, who my ideals make me out to be. I did the best that I could. I like to think that I succeeded, but in the end, I wasn't who I was. I'm no authoritarian, not really. You know, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that just wants to be left alone, to live my life, and try to make my way. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what I live by. Sadly enough, not a lot of people agree with that. Sadly enough, even me being here today will probably get used against me by the system. I'm going through my divorce, and due to very, very insane accusations, you know, I'm looked at and being scrutinized as a spousal abuser. And I found out that the interview that I had with Ian, they want to try to use that against me. Why? Because I came out for liberty. That affects how I am as a parent. That affects my ability to be a parent to my son. Point of that is the system is going to use whatever it can against you. If it's got something to use on you, it's going to use it, and they're going to do everything they can to try to make you look like crap. That's just the way they roll. You just got to fight it. You just got to keep going. You know, that's the only thing I can really do is just keep going. You know, I was asked, because I was recently a guest on the Attorney for Freedom radio show, you know, what are you doing to help people, you know, in the idea of liberty? It's like, well, if people have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I may not have all the answers, but I can at least provide some. I'm trying to get my own, I've got my own radio show, and I'm hoping to be able to go live with that. And it's not politically based. It's comedy. My main thing is I just want to make people happy. I want to make people laugh, because I figure in this world with the way things are, you need to be able to have a laugh. Because if you're not laughing, you're crying. And if you're crying, it makes everything you're going through that much harder. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do the best that I can to take care of myself, take care of my son, and to build a life. Because the best thing you can do against any enemy you have is prosper. They don't want to see you prosper. They don't want to see you happy. They don't want to see you doing what you love doing. So do what you love to do. Be happy with who you are, because that's the one thing. They can't take that from you unless you let them. So I'm not sure how far I've gone over things, but I don't know if anybody want to ask me something. We got a couple of seconds, before we move.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah, what's up?
You said you were. Can you go to the mic, please? Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you have to walk.
No, it's fine. I know we're a little bit over time here, but I think this is interesting me anyway. Okay, so you were a jailer in the Cheshire County Jail, right? And
Yeah.
now you have a Liberty podcast. Is that correct?
Oh no, it's not. No, I was on a Liberty radio show.
You don't have a? Aren't you doing radio?
Oh yeah,
or-
well I had my my YouTube video that I did with Ian, and I wouldn't even so much say that it's strictly towards freedom. It's more the freedom of me saying whatever the hell I want to say. Thing is though, is that they use that against me too. They've used that against me before in the past.
It was
also.
just the one interview with Ian. And
Yeah, well, not even just the one interview with Ian, but just everything about it.
Okay.
They want to use against me. But yeah, I did have my blog. It was called All Things Bryan Tann. I actually had the website, bryantann.com, and I had a lot of stuff on there too. I've even gone over some of my poetry. And it's really I've been planning on just keep doing it anyway, keep doing my vlog, I guess they call it. I'm not hip on tech jargon anymore. But I've been thinking about, keeping up with that even with me doing my radio show, just for the fact that, if I can make a person smile, then that's fine. And I've tried to have open forum with it also. If you have something you want me to discuss, send it to me. I got no problem talking about it. And like I said, I called Ian up on the phone, and it was supposed to be a 10-minute interview, turned into an hour and a half. Hey, I'll interview people. I don't care. We can talk about anything you want to talk about. I don't have anything. I'd never had anything that was taboo.
Okay.
So.
Thank you for being another black man in Keene. So now if there's a, I'm not done.
Did you ever play the game?
Now if there's a bank robbery, I can say, hey, it was him. Hey, it was the other guy.
Did you ever play the game?
No, the game what?
You see a black person, you go,
Oh yeah.
the nod game. It's a black man nod
We walked
game.
in the room. Y'all didn't see me like that.
Man, what's
Okay.
going on? I'm not alone.
Actually, my question is, in the process for training you for the corrections career, were you ever taught like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, human rights, or anything like that?
The Constitution, actually, there were, and I'm thinking back a couple of years, I actually learned about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution while I was actually going to school, and when I was actually going for my associate's degree. And it was actually our teacher at my school, the one thing that I did like about my school is that all of my teachers were either current or retired law enforcement. And the one gentleman that taught me, his name was Kevin McDowell, and he is a University of Pittsburgh police officer. And he actually said, and he made it a big deal, he really pushed the Bill of Rights, because he said that not only does this protect you, but it protects the people out there. And he even said that when you forget the Bill of Rights, you should find another job, because we're not in this to take liberty. We are in this to uphold the law and uphold the safety of the community. As far as the Bill of, now I'm not going to say this 100%, but I will say this to answer your question. I do remember that there were amendments and different things in the bill that we used to sort of protect ourselves against things that we did. From what I remember, we didn't so much go through all of it like with the fine-tooth comb. As a matter of fact, talking about the training, I had an instance where I was at the academy, at the Corrections Academy up in Concord, and the training officer, the training captain from Merrimack County, she started to actually single me out, and talking about, in corrections, it's good to have people of different walks of life, an African American perhaps, and I lost my mind. I completely lost my mind, because I was like, first of all, I find that term disrespectful. I find the term racist, because how do you know that none of my family are from Jamaica or the Dominican Republic or Australia? You realize calling a person that's from Jamaica African American, they might try to take your head off? You can't blanket people into a group. And then if you really, really, really want to get more and more technical, everybody in America is an African American, because the remains of the first human being was found in Africa. Well, what do you want to be called? Bryan would be nice. So, I mean, the thing that sucks about it, and that's a good question about, the Bill of Rights and human rights. When they do talk about the human rights of things, they try to tell you, you want to call people sir, ma'am, and call them by their name, you know what I mean, to try to. So there were aspects of that at the CCDOC that they did try to push. And that's something that I did appreciate, I think, though, that the one hard part about a lot of it was that there's just so much of a judgmental nature of a lot of people, because either they have issues with drugs, or they have issues with free Keene, or they have issues with a lot. So I guess with some people, there's, like, to someone who wasn't working there, you probably wouldn't see it, but I saw some of it as condescension. And once again, that's not me trying to talk down on anybody. That's just how I saw it. I mean, there's some people that work there at the jail that aren't bad people. There are people that are just doing like me. They're just trying to scrape by a living. Some people that shouldn't have a badge on their chest at all. There's some of them that should be in the jail themselves, not as an officer, but as an inmate.
We had a discussion earlier this morning about use of force. And having been in a situation where you were working in that facility and you were keeping people in those cages by force, knowing that the reasons that they were in those cages were repugnant morally, I'm interested to know what your feelings are on people who would use force to free their loved ones from those facilities, and separately, if you believe that your former colleagues could be reasoned with into leaving their positions as you have.
Wow. First and foremost, I would totally be against trying to take anyone out of jail by force, because it's a felony. I mean, that's, let's look at it as it is, whether we agree with it or not. It is a felony. To break someone out of a correctional facility is theoretically a felony, and then now you and that person will have a felony on your record. I'm sorry if it's an answer that isn't popular, but I mean, just for the sake of safety, I would totally be against that, just for the fact that they got guns there and they're not for show.
So do I.
But what's that really going to solve? I mean, for someone who's in jail for a misdemeanor, whether we agree with it or not, if I go to try to break them out because I disagree with why they're in there, now, and they come with me, now we're both felons, and I'm putting their life in jeopardy. And I don't want to see anybody hurt. I don't want to see anybody die. There's enough of that. They used to ask me one time, as a matter of fact, and I still have in my wallet right here. Hold on. That's going to be maxed out soon. I don't have enough to put anything on that. Probably don't have enough for that. This here is a card that I got from the state of Pennsylvania when I got my associate's degree. This says that in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I am a certified agent in the Lethal Weapons Training Act, which means that in the state of Pennsylvania, I can carry a firearm for work purposes, which means that I can be an armed security officer at a bank, I could be an armed officer on a, what are those things called? The big vans they put money in, armored trucks, things of that nature. And one of the things they ask you on that test, can you draw a gun on another human being and open fire at the risk of taking their life? I answered yes, because I could. Does that mean that I want to? No. I've been studying martial arts since I was 8 years old. I got my black belt about 2 years ago. And some of the higher ranking self-defense techniques can bring about death to another human being. Do I ever want to use that? No, because I do not want to harm another human being. Not verbally, especially not physically. And to do like what you were talking about, you know, to break someone out by force, all I can see is just loss of life. And it's sad, you know. And as much as the system is ridiculous, as hypocritical as the system is, you know, in a system where he who has the most money gets to make the rules, in a system where he who has the most money won't do the same amount of time as a person who doesn't have the money, sadly enough, you got to try to use it to get someone out. And it sucks. And it's a losing battle. I admit that. I know that. But at times, going about something to meet force with force, that's another losing battle. And I never thought that I would say anything like that, because I've never been a peacenik. I just want to say, I've never been a person that was, you know, peace, peace, peace. You know, I was always about, when you come at me and get in my face, I'm going to knock your ass out. Because that's just the way it is. And that's where I came from. You know, you didn't let nobody get in your face. And you knock them down. But I don't know, maybe I'm getting older, maybe I'm getting wiser. I don't know. I'm still of the mindset that if someone gets in my face to do me bodily harm, I'm going to knock them out. But at the same token, that's not something that I seek. That's not something that I would suggest, because sadly enough, life ain't like the A-Team. Eventually those slugs hit, and it hurt.
The second part of the question, though, could you think that your colleagues can be reasoned with as you were?
Thanks. I knew there was another point I was. Honestly, the only reason why I would say no is because we're still in a point right now where, of around this area, that jail, as ridiculous as the pay is one of the better paying jobs in this area. And that's why I stayed. I thought that for one, that jail is also the lowest paid correctional facility in this state, probably in the country. Before the move was made to Keene, one of the officers, and I believe it was the same officer that we talked about in the paper with the PTSD from Robin Hooding, I believe he made the call. When other jails found out how much we made, they laughed at us. I remember I was at the Correctional Academy, and we talked about how much people were making to start. And when I told them how much I made to start, they laughed at me. Like, how the hell are you going to do that job getting paid that little? I mean, we start, you know, the prison in of itself, a guy walking off the street go into the prison and start at $35,000 to $36,000 a year. I went into the Cheshire County Department of Corrections not even netting 27. When I left, I still wasn't netting 30. So no, I don't see anybody leaving, especially people that have those nice groovy chevrons on there that say they've got rank. Because once you make staff sergeant, you're bumped up a pay grade. And if you're on a different shift where there's a shift differential, you know, you could probably make a little bit of extra money. So sadly enough, no, not unless some of those people get to a point where they see something or experience something or something is said to them or they are treated in a way that pisses them off completely. I don't really see any of them leaving. I mean, there'll be talk about it, sure. I mean, there's one fellow who's talking about moving down to Virginia. because with his certification, he could go down there and make hand over fist better. And I'm not even talking about in corrections. I'm talking about in another field. And I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to give him away. But he hates the jail. He hates it. He hates the crap that they pull. He hates the BS that goes on there. They love him. I mean, they promote him. They've promoted him over me. They look at him like he walks on water. But he hates it there. So I guess I shouldn't say no. What I should say is if there were better opportunities for them, oh, absolutely, they would leave. Most of those people there don't want to be there, but they're there because that pays the best in town. But as soon as this recession ends and there's actually money to be made in other places, oh, hell yeah, that place will be more empty than Jonestown. Hi.
Hi, Bryan.
How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for being here and
for having me.
for everything you do, making a difference. The fact that you advocated for Rich Paul to get a keyboard made a huge difference. And just to follow up on it, when he was moved from R block to D block, there was a keyboard in D block, so he typed up that motion.
Oh, he did? Good.
Then moved back to R block, but the motion was typed.
Good.
So it went in, and it was cleared by the prosecutor that Rich could have home confinement or work release.
Awesome. That's
Cleared
great.
by the judge.
That's great.
Denied by Van Wickler. So
Why am I not shocked?
all this energy and effort to get it all that way to fail, right? But your advocating did make a difference.
I'm gonna leave my thoughts on him. I'm gonna let that go for now because I still have to live here.
Also, Van Wickler had denied Rich for the partial release program. What's the point of a program that no inmates can get into? I don't know. We'll see if anybody actually gets out that way. But people like you making a difference in there keep it human. And so I wonder the extent of which you're affecting other colleagues now. Like you were saying, I think the effect is a ripple out. You may not notice right away how many of them want out of that, but they sign up for 20 to 25 years, and then I have no escape, right?
Yeah.
So you're incarcerated in your own way.
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to actually, I think I even told Rich this. I said, you know what? You at least have an idea of when you're getting out. Me, I'm here about 25 to life. And it's true because, I mean, really, the way you look at it, I got to make money. At the end of the day, I got to make money. I got bills to pay. Sadly enough, PSNH don't want to hear that I don't have the money because they'll shut off my lights like that. So, but I mean, the one guy sits there and goes, oh, I'm going to be here for the next 23 months. I'm like, yeah, but at least you'll be out of here and you have the choice. You can never come back here again. Me, 23 months, I'll probably still be standing here, so. I don't really know where I was going with that.
It was a long sentence that you escaped before 25 years.
Thank God. If I had to be there for 25 years, I'd probably have developed a lot of issues. Probably.
So on the note of it being a human situation in there, Rich has had the guards writing him up minor, taking away visits for a week at a time. This has happened 5 times now. So out of his 7 months, he's been denied the company of anybody who might visit him for 5 weeks.
Wait, they took a week's worth of visits?
Yeah, really, really petty too. So the latest one was he had need for new shoes, asked the jail for several days for shoes. They proceeded to write him up for stinky shoes and take his visits away for a week. So this is the level we're at. And does calling the jail to say that's unacceptable behavior get him treated worse? Or does it raise enough of a fuss to get them called out on their behavior? And then enough other inmates are aware of the treatment that they might, I don't know, they might protest their own write-ups and get themselves treated more human. What can we do?
Well, for one, I think it's complete and utter, pardon my French, bullshit that he's going, he went through all that just to get the door slammed in his face at the end. Like I said, I think that's complete and utter crap. And my feelings on the superintendent, as much as I want to just completely and utterly just blast and rip, I kind of want to take a moral high road, just for the fact that what's it really gonna get me? But I'll tell you this, I will say this flat out, as fair and impartial and as a nice guy as he wants to come off as, the man's a politician. I'll leave it at that. As far as would it get him negative treatment, it's kind of hard to answer, because the top of my head I want to say it ain't going to make his life easier. At the same token, the thing that sucks with a minor write-up is you cannot appeal that. That's one of the things that, they probably don't tell you. You can't appeal a minor. See, this is the way the write-ups work. You get your majors, which are usually your class 1s, which go from anywhere of violating the crimes code while incarcerated, fighting, things of that manner. Your class 2s can go between major and minor to discretion of the officer. Your class 3s are the petty shit that no one ever writes you up for, usually. Unless you just want to fuck with somebody. So, honestly, in my own personal and humble opinion, if he's asking for shoes, and he's probably getting the same runaround that I remember seeing, yeah, I'll get right on that. Yeah, I'll get right on that. Yeah, I'll get right on that. And then it never happens, and now he's getting written up for a hygiene issue. That's petty shit. That's straight petty shit. And there's nothing he can really do, but have
somebody panic.
That's bill collector. So there's really not. If you would call, sadly enough, I couldn't even say that it would probably have any real good, unfortunately, because really, what I would see happening is, like, you can maybe direct that to the superintendent, and he'll say, I'll look into it. And that's about it. And then as far as them protesting it, I'll put it to you like this, the idea of them being able to protest their write-ups and so forth, you can bitch and moan all you want. There was a time where if you even mentioned union, officers were afraid of losing their jobs because someone might mention union. So if officers are going to be in that much fear over something just like that, pretty sure there's nothing going to be done about an inmate complaining about a minor write-up. And I hate to put it in that regard, but sadly enough, that's the fact on it, and it sucks. But there are some people that just don't care. There are some people that aren't human about it. There are some people that, and sadly enough, and the thing is, the one thing that I really like about Rich is that Rich don't give a shit. Rich don't care. Rich is going to speak his mind, and you are not going to stop him. That's not popular. That endeared him to me. I'm like, dude, this guy's cool as hell. He speaks his mind, and you know what, me and him, I remember the first time I saw Rich, he came in at intake, and he just had the big smile on his face, and he was cooperating, but he was doing it on his terms, and I thought that was cool. I'm trying not to smile outward, but I'm like, go ahead. But sadly enough, a lot of people, they don't feel that. And it's not gonna. How much longer does he have in there anyway?
He's scheduled to get out December 12th, unless he gets bail before then. The bail motion is at the Supreme Court right now. If he gets his good time, though, and at the rate they're going, I'm a little nervous they're going to take his good time and keep him till April. Yeah, the whole thing, that's the thing that sucks, too, when you throw good time. See, I don't know exactly how the good time works because I was never on that committee. They never really let officers in on it. Probably because an officer would probably suggest different things, because the one thing that was cool about the officers, and one thing that a lot of us did try to talk to superintendent and other administration about, is that we're the ones that are in there with these people.
So why wouldn't you want to get some of our input on if we think they should be given good time or not? But I don't know if that's changed since I left back in July. But honestly, I'm not really sure how, like, if he's getting the minors on top. Has he had any major write-ups since he's been in there? Well, that's good. That's useful.
They're just trying to keep him apart from anybody that might visit him.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, and the thing is
personal retaliation.
Probably. You know, and I think that the whole idea of writing someone up for personal hygiene, even though they've been asking you for new shoes, yeah, that definitely comes out as retaliatory to me. And if it helps at all, I'll be putting up a special middle finger on that one, because that's bullshit.
Gracias, señor.
Matter of fact,
Lip on the bird.
Anybody else? Promise, I'm not scary. You're the man. What's up?
Hey, Brian, I'm James. I was curious, have you ever heard of the Threat Management Center in Detroit? They're kind of an organization, private security. They approach like security, policing issues from a position of love and using the minimal amount of force necessary to resolve a situation. And hearing you speak, I was reminded of that organization when you were talking about, instead of tackling someone and breaking their arm, just using that minimal amount of force to subdue them. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's a great, I mean, I don't know anything about that group personally, but I'm a firm believer of, if you can use, don't use more than you should have to. I mean, that was at least one thing that they would say, you know, in our defensive tactics, if the inmate takes it here, you take it here. You don't go here. In other words, yeah, if you're coming at me to like punch me in the face, I shouldn't give you a knife strike to the throat and then elbow you in your temple and then just completely like crush you to death. You know, block your punch, subdue your arm, take you down, protect myself. I mean, that's just common in martial arts, period. I mean, unless your life is in imminent danger, you don't go straight to lethal force. You know, it's called the force continuum. You know, so I mean, if it's, in other words, like, yeah, someone's coming out to throw a punch at you and that's like a level 3 thing, you don't jump right up to level 5, which is lethal, you know. But I think that handling things with as minimal force as necessary is a great idea, because of the fact that really, you know, what's the point? I mean, is this my junk can shoot farther than yours can? I mean, now granted, at the same token, not all situations are the same across the board. You know, excuse me. That's the one thing that I can at least say in some circumstances. Part of the problem is, I think, a misunderstanding. Like, you know, if a person is coming at you, you don't know what their intentions are. You can't read a person's mind. I really just think that, you know, I think training and a culture of, you know, minimum force possible. And, you know, if the person that you're dealing with is taking that threat level higher up, then, you know, of course you have to protect yourself. At the end of the day, the whole goal is to go home to your family. You know, when I was in the jail, I used to always pray that I could make it home in one piece, and that if I did have to go hands-on with a person, that they could make it home to their family in one piece. You know, as long as I survive, they survive, I'm happy with it. It's a good outcome. It's a good day. You know, and I still firmly stand by that. You know, I'll defend myself to the death if I have to, but I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't want anyone to be hurt. And that's at least another thing that I can say with when I was working at the CCDOC, is that after that inmate had that broken arm, the way we went about defensive tactics did change. You know, they continued to fully stress not taking things too far. And especially, and a lot of it was too, there were instances even during defensive tactics training classes that people were just getting way too rough with each other. I mean, there was even a point in time I actually had to tell somebody, you need to slow it down, because if you hurt me, I'm going to kick your ass. I told him that flat out. I said, I will kick your ass. You know, we ain't here to hurt each other. We're here to learn, we're here to train, and we're not supposed to be trying to hurt them out there. We're supposed to be protecting, care, custody, and control. We're not there to hurt. We're not here to lord over nobody. So I think that, I guess, a use of force is something where it's really like, it's personal. It's the person that's doing it. It's the person that, like, if you come at me, my main thing is I'm going to try to end it without us being too badly harmed. If it was me 10 years ago, I'm just going to tear your arm off and beat you with it. It's the person. It's who they are. So, sadly enough, there is no just one answer. It's got to be, it's situational and it's personal. Who that person is that has the power to use the force, and what is the situation they are in. It's really easy to Monday morning quarterback what happens after the fact. But when you're straight in the thick of it, when the bone is to the marrow, you're not even thinking about, well, how can I handle this to make it safe for both of us? You're just trying to get out of the situation. And I think that that's one thing when it comes to, the one thing that comes in with law enforcement that is probably the hardest thing that I dealt with is not only second guessing myself, but also, I don't know, I guess just dealing with the situation. Did I do too much? Did I do too little? What could I have done differently? And I think that just comes with having a heart, and the situation. None of us are really going to know unless we're in that situation.
Bryan, I just want to say thank you for coming and speaking at Keenevention today. We're beyond time at this point. I've got to wrap the room out, and there's still a few things to do. So I'm wondering, are you going to be coming to Social Sunday today? I know you got a busy schedule, but I'm wondering if that's something that you'll be doing. So 6 o'clock today at McHugh's, 12 Emerald Street here in Keene, Social Sundays. I'm sure a lot of people from Keenevention are going to be there. Come on out, get a chance to talk to Bryan a little bit further, and all the other wonderful, great speakers that we've had here this weekend. And I want to, again, show much appreciation to everybody for coming out and taking time. And a big round of applause for Bryan Tann.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeene.com. FreeKeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. FreeKeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. FreeKeene.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.